started discussing about Charles Darwin's contribution on evolutionary biology. Ito nga po tinatawag na theory of evolution through natural selection. So this time, we'll just continue our discussion and we'll be discussing from the distant past. Fossils document the existence of now species showing the different subdivision of the landscape, so you can also record. So since it is the remains of organisms na present po in layers. The fossil depends on the age of the rock layers. So that's one of the comparing the structures or morphological structures of organisms. You can also tell whether these organisms have evolved from a common ancestor or not. So, meron po tayong tinatawag na meron po tayong tinatawag na homologous structures, analogous, and vestigial. Hindi ko na nalagyan ng definition, but maybe one of you can provide the definition or description kung alam po natin. So, comparative anatomy is the study of the similarities of different species. Similar body parts may be homologous or, again, vestigial. So, anyone who wants to differentiate homologous, analogous, and vestigial?
Hello, ma'am.
Class? Who wants to answer? Yes po. Yes po, dinig po. Yes po, dinig.
Bali po, ma'am, for homologous structures po, these are structures that having similar in related organisms because they came from a common ancestor. While analogous structures has also same or similar structures, but they are coming from unrelated organisms, or they only have similar parts or structures, but they became from different common ancestor. While vestigial structures are the leftover from evolution that used to have function but useless now. Some of the example is ano po, ma'am?
And then, pag sinabi po natin vestigial,
yung vestigial po, ma'am, yun po yung mga nag-evolve po na parts ng body po from ancestors po na until now nag-exist, pero yung purpose niya po ay hindi na po nagagamit or useless na po yung part of body or part po ng isang living organism.
Okay, so very good. So pag sinabi po nating homologous structure, katulad po ng definition na nandiyan, these are the structures that are similar in related organisms. So yung mga present day species po natin ay may na kumbaga magkamag-anak talaga. So it will follow na yung kanilang structures for the present species are the same. While may iko dito now with analogous structures naman po, for present day species, the structures are the same, diba? Pero po, if you will trace their evolutionary history, they do not came from that they do not came from a common ancestor. Entirely different organism, different species, but since they do those body parts do the same function, ang tendency po they evolve over time na maging parehas. They perform organs, related species. Now, pag sinabi po natin vestigial are reduced, okay, reduced form of functional structures of organism, reduced. So, nangyari pong present sa mga tapos yung present day species ay hindi na po present. Or maaaring malaki po noon, pero sa present day species ay hindi na po. Okay? Kasi hindi na siya functional. Okay? So, over time, nag-reduce siya, lumiit siya. Okay? Since nga po, hindi na siya kailangan. Okay? Or hindi naman sa hindi kailangan, hindi na siya ganun ka-functional. Okay? So, yun po yung ibig sabihin ng vestigial structure. So, by comparing all these body parts, all these morphological structures of organism, you can tell you can tell kung itong mga organisms na to, they evolved from a common ancestor, comparing their body parts, but their ecology is the study of the similarities and differences in the embryos of different species. So you can study daw po, of organism, specifically yung mga vertebrate animals natin, mga animals with backbone, because embryos of many animals with backbone are very similar, na maaaring for the present day species, when I say present day species, yung mga itsura nila ngayon, mga organisms na ito, maaaring mukhang hindi sila magkakamukha o nila. But if you look po, you can tell whether ito pong mga species or not. Then, another thing, the biological molecules. So, another evidence of evolution is involved in biology, which is the basic chemistry and processes that occur in cells. It involves the comparison of DNA, proteins such as cytochrome C and hemoglobin, and chromosomes across these species. So, very important po ito sa atin, di ba? Yung checking the DNA, di ba, of species of organisms to check whether they're kamag-anak nila. So, sa mga movies or sa totoong buhay, di ba? Madalas po yan na ginagamit para ma-check po if magulang niya ba to, tatay niya ba to, anak niya ba to, by comparing their DNA. Okay? So, but aside from DNA, pwede rin daw po na i-compare yung protein nila, yung sequences of protein. Okay, remember that itong mga binabanggit ko, their DNA, their RNA, and protein, these are biomolecules. These are biological molecules. And merong sequencing po yan. Diba? DNA, organize ng mga adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, and uracil, if it is RNA, if we can still recall those terms. So, may mga pattern po yan, sequences po yan. Also with protein, yung sequences of amino acid. So, you can tell daw po, by comparison organisms or in same species, you can tell whether ito nga po mga organisms na to are related or unrelated. Then, panghuli is evidence from biogeography. Biogeography is the study of how and why organisms live where they do. It provides more evidence for evolution. So, biogeography is basically the geographical distribution of different organisms, of plants and animals around the world. So, yun yung pinag-aaralan po dyan, the distribution of organisms. Maaring yung isang organ ay nandito sa north, tapos yung isa nasa south, di ba? Ay magkalayo talaga, no? Pero po, when they study, no, malalaman nila na they're related. They share a common store. Itong mga organism ito, doon isa na snort to several factors. Some related. So it could be common pattern, may mga species of organism that undergo migration, maaari ding climatic change or geological forces, yung plate tectonics, okay, which is nangyayari naman talaga. Okay? Kaya nadidistribute yung mga species na maaring related sila, pero because of those factors na binanggit ko, ay either climatic or geological factors or forces ay kakahiwa-hiwalay sila. Okay? So those are the evidences of evolution. Please take note of that. From fossil record to comparing the anatomical structure of organism by comparing their biological molecules, the sequence, by comparing their embryonic development, also by studying biogeography or the geographical distribution of different plants, species of plants and animals. Excuse me, narinig po ba ng maayos?
Narinig naman po, ma'am.
Diyan po kayo.
Yes po, ma'am. Narinig po.
Ayan, salamat. Okay po. So, next ay ito. Ayan. Okay, thank you po. Okay po, salamat. Okay, so next is ito, babasahin ko. Darwin believed that there is a process by which organisms can better adapt in their environment to survive, while those less able to adapt become extinct. So this process is known as adaptation, or natural selection simply means adaptation. So natural selection is the process by which organisms better suited to environment survive, although less these are the five components. The process of natural selection has these five components na dapat po nating tandaan. So these five components include una, overpopulation. So, or high rate of population. So the number of offspring is usually greater than the available resources necessary for organisms to survive. Organisms can die from many causes, like disease, starvation, being eaten by predator. Remember class, na isa sa mga nag-influence ulit kay Charles Darwin, bukod po sa mga diniscuss na natin last time about Charles Lyell, if you can still recall him, aside from Alfred Wallace, diba? Another individual which or who influenced Charles Darwin is Thomas Robert Malthus. Okay, Thomas Malthus with his Malthusian theory, which actually states that. Okay. With his Malthusian principle, which states that population grows so Robert with this Malthusian principle simply states that population grows, geometric grows arithmetically. Okay, so aside from Lyell, aside from Wallace, and learned through natural selection was Thomas Robert Malthus with his Malthusian principle stating that population grows geometrically while food production grows arithmetically. Meaning, Meaning? Anyone?
Ano po yun, ma'am? Pwede po paulit.
Ano lang po ibig sabihin? Na yung pong nakatype po sa slide, itinipe ko po. Population grows, sabi ni Thomas Malthus, population grows geometrically while production grows arithmetically.
Ma'am, in my own interpretation, habang ang ibig sabihin po, habang lumalaki yung populasyon, yung sources naman po ng food or yung food production mismo na is nagiging limited po.
Nagiging limited, tama ba, Mariah?
Opo.
Okay. So, or in other words, di ba, pag sinabi po natin geometrically, parang exponential growth of the population, di ba? When you say exponential growth of population, doble, rapidly increasing po yung growth ng population over the food production. Both are increasing. You cannot tell na yung food production ay hindi naman nag-i-increase. Hindi naman sila inversely proportional. Directly proportional sila. Pareho silang nag-i-increase. It's just that, yun nga po, the growth of the population is rapidly increasing or exponentially as opposed to food production na sabi it grows arithmetically. So parang kung sa mathematics yan, para ka lang nagbibilang yan. So kumparahin mo yung dalawa, so mas mabilis nga naman yung growth ng population over the food production. So hindi makasabay, Hindi makasabay yung food production with the rapid growth of the population, resulting to starvation, predation, yung mga negative type of relationships. Okay? Now, dahil dyan, karugtong po niya nagkakaroon ng struggle for existence. Kasi nga po, ang dami-dami na, ang bilis dumami ng population ng mga species of organism, tas hindi makasabay yung food production. So, yung bawat organism, they struggle for their existence. So every organism must struggle to survive. Organism must compete for limited resources, including food, territory, or other necessities of life to survive. So some live, some live, others die. Those organisms with desirable traits which are best suited on the environment will survive, others don't. Okay? Kaya, para mabuhay di ba? Para mag-survive po, kailangan magkaroon ng variation. Okay, presence of variation. So there's variation within a species. Okay, you belong to the same species of organism, pero po there is variation. Meaning there's variation in traits and characteristics. Halimbawa, pare-parehas kayo isang species na kumakain ng apple. Pero since nga po ang dami-dami nyo na at lahat ay gugusto apple, kung magde-debate ka doon sa food source nyo na apple, gusto mo na rin, kumain ka na rin ng banana, 'di ba? Wala namang nag-aagawan, nagko-compete doon sa banana. Then you will survive. 'Di ba? Yung mga nagko-compete dun sa apple pa, either mamatay sila sa gutom kasi kukulang yung food resource, o kaya naman mamatay sila if they will compete with their with other organism na merong common need for that food source. So ang tendency, kung magkakaroon ng variation of trait, diba, kain ka na lang ng iba, then you will survive. Yun lang yung point po nito. Okay? So, in these variations, okay, survival of the fittest. So some of these variations allow member of a species to survive and reproduce better than the others. Those traits help organisms to survive and reproduce in a given environment. Okay? So that's very important, na magkaroon po ng variation of traits for you to survive in the environment. And remember, sabi ni Charles Darwin, that this variation of traits can be transmitted. The organisms that survive and produce gradually transmits their traits to their offspring, creating more and more of that population. Okay? So some traits or variation traits are passed on from parents to offspring, although meron din namang mga certain traits which are strongly influenced by environmental conditions. Okay? That's according to Charles Darwin. So, nagets po ba natin? So, magkakaano lang sila, no? Magkakarugtong lang po sila. Ito, again, ito pong iinigay ko dito, the component of Darwin's process of natural selection. Again, di ba, when you say natural selection, an organism needs to adapt to the changes in the environment for them to survive and evolve over time. Okay? And then, in relation to sex. Ay, asan yung question dyan? Asan na ba? Oh, okay. And Darwin is following his main book on the origin of species. The book discusses about the relationship of the theory of evolution and the theory of sexual selection. Okay, so he wrote this book to explore the following concept. First, whether a man descended from some pre-existing form. And second, the manner of that development, and lastly, the value of the differences between the so-called races of man. So the book is mainly divided into two volumes, namely the evolution of man and sexual selection. Basically, the descent of man, which was written, which was published, by Charles Darwin in 1871, argued stated that human beings, shared a common ancestor with the great African apes. So, ito yung isa sa naging controversial nga po na statement ni Charles Darwin that we human beings, may share a common ancestor with the apes. So, although he identified that the defining characteristics of human species against the African apes is we have this large brain size, and they deduced that the evolutionary advantage of human species was intelligence. So kumbaga, yun yung ating advantage over this over this African apes. Although yung inilagay naman na yun, o isinulat na yun ni Charles Darwin, is may mga basis din naman siya, no? Na may mga basis naman siya, like yung mga DNA structure daw, at the same time, yung morphological structure of these two organisms are almost the same, sabi ni Charles Darwin. And then yung ayan. Tapos the theory that human races ascended from two or more ancestral types, so ang sagot po dyan ay polygenism. So ito yung class ayan, so kasamay din po dun sa librong yun, bukod doon sa idea na human species and great African apes may have or may share a common ancestor. Another thing na in-emphasize din ni Charles Darwin in this book is yung value of the differences between the so-called races of man, o yung tinatawag nga po niyang polygenism. Okay, polygenism is basically yung wala dyan sa okay, so basically ito ay okay, so basically ito po ano ba yan? Saglit lang, class, ha? Naghang naman ngayon. Ay, nako. Hello? Naririnig po ba ako?
Yes po.
Yes po, ma'am.
Ayan. Thank you. Ayan. So, ayun po. Saan na ba? Ayan. So again, doon po sa second book, di ba yung first book niya po is yung On the Origin of Species, and then itong second book is The Descent of Man and in relation to sex. So una, in-emphasize niya nga that maaring human and apes have share common ancestor. Tapos or doon sa librong yun, tawag ang polygenism. It is a theory that human races ascended from two or more ancestral types. So polygenism is basically the theory or the belief that the existing human races have evolved from two or more distant ancestral types. So human races are of different origins. Parang ganun po yan. Okay? Then, he tackles evidences to argue that humans evolved from lower form of animal, examine the similarities between man and some higher animals like primates, dogs, horses, and other mammals. He began to compare the anatomy and the brain capability. Kaya nga po nasabi niya na merong large brain size at saka may intelligence ang tao compared to other organism or other animals. He also explored the similarity of some of their characteristics and behavior corresponding on how they adapt. So Charles Darwin then continues his work by further explaining the role of natural selection and genetic inheritance, stating that both humans and animals have traits and intellectual ability can be passed on to mix or it may also change. It may also evolve over time because of the environmental condition. So he also explored the similarity of some of their characteristics and behavior corresponding on how they adapt. Ending the first part of the book, he rejected both idea of monogenism, kabaliktaran lang yun ng polygenism, stating that a possible reason for the divergence of racial differences was caused by sexual selection. Yan, stating that the possible reason for the divergence of racial differences was caused by sexual selection. That's another thing na in-emphasize po ni Charles Darwin doon sa kanyang second book. Okay? Ayun o. According to Charles Darwin, what do men have to offer in order for them to be more valuable to women as their mate? So the answer for this is attractive appearance. Okay? So selection in relation to sex. So Charles Darwin proposed the idea of sexual selection, which states that a female species, chooses a mate with a more attractive appearance and a more dominant trait. So, a more dominant trait to explain why there's a physical feature of some animals with no function. This implies that animals evolved to gain reproductive advantage. Pag sinabi nating sexual selection, ito yung ability ng isang species to attract their mate. Okay? So, like for instance, by having certain traits, traits like basta anything that could attract their, pwedeng kulay, meron sila pronouns, coloration, intellectual that through constant developing of the male, the choices of the female highly inferior to the male. But, sabi ni Charles Darwin, for more complex organisms, katulad po natin, more factor under to this idea of in nature. So he
Ma'am, nagsa-choppy na po ulit yung audio po.
wala, hindi niya na ako marinig. Wala, ang nakikita ko nga dito, you lost your network connection. Trying to
Nagcha-choppy po, ma'am.
reconnect. Try to reconnect. Naka-10 na din po. Can I continue na? Hi, class.
Hello po, ma'am. Ma'am, di po namin kayo naririnig po.